Okay, so we are on chapter 15 of the Scythe, and last chapter was pretty huge. We found out that when they were at the conclave that Scythe Faraday was the first person to ever have two apprentices, and someone then said that whoever he didn't choose, the chosen new Scythe would have to kill the other apprentice. Whew, that's kind of crazy. So Citra or Rowan would have to then. Oh, okay. Chapter 15, The Space Between. The night was bleak, and rain streaked the window of the train, distorting the lights beyond until the lights were gone. Rowan knew they were slicing through the countryside now, but the darkness could have been the airless expanse of space. I won't do it, Citra finally said, breaking the silence that had engulfed them since leaving the conclave. They can't make me do it. Faraday didn't say a word, didn't even look at her, so Rowan took it upon himself to answer, yes, they can. Finally, Faraday looked at them. Rowan is right, he said. They will find whatever button will make you dance, and dance you will, no matter how hideous the tune. Citra kicked the empty seat in front of her. How could they be so awful, and why do they hate us so much? It's not all of them, Rowan said, and I don't think it's really about us. Clearly, Faraday was a respected Scythe, and although he didn't come out against Goddard today, his feelings about the man were definitely clear. Goddard must see Fairway as a threat. Attacking Rowan and Citra was a warning shot. What if we both fail? Citra then suggested. What if we're lousy apprentices? Then they can't choose either of us. And yet they will, Faraday told her with an authority and finality that left little room for doubt. No matter how poorly you perform, they will still choose one of you for the spectacle alone. And then he scowled in disgust. And a set of precedents. I'll bet Goddard has enough friends to make sure it happens, said Rowan. I think he has the high blade on his side, too. Indeed, Faraday said, with the world-weary sigh. Never before have there been so many wheels within the wheels in the Cylodone. Rowan closed his eyes, wishing he could close his mind as well and hide from his own thoughts. In 8 months, I will be killed by Citra, he thought, or I will kill her and call it gleaning. It didn't change the fact of what it was. He cared for Citra, but enough to surrender his life and let her win? Citra certainly wouldn't back down to let him earn the ring. When he opened his eyes, he caught her staring at him. She didn't look away. Rowan, she said, whatever happens, I want you to know. Don't, Rowan told her, just don't. And the rest of the ride was silent. Citra, who was not the heaviest sleeper, found herself awake all night after they arrived home. Images of the sights she saw at conclave filled even the hints of her dreams, drawing her back to unwanted wakefulness. The wise ones, the schemers, the compassionate, and those who did not seem to care. Such a delicate charge was as pruning the human race should not be a subject to quirks of personality. Scythes were supposed to be above the petty, just as they were above the law. Faraday certainly was. If she became a Scythe, she would follow his lead, and if she didn't become one, it wouldn't matter because she'd be dead. Perhaps there was some sort of twisted wisdom in the decision to have one of them gleaned by the other. Whoever wins will begin their life as a Scythe in abject sorrow, never to forget the cost of that ring. Morning came with no great fanfare. It was just an ordinary day like any other. The rain had passed, and the sun peeked from behind shifting clouds. It was Rowan's turn to make breakfast, eggs and hash browns. He never cooked the potatoes long enough. Pails, Citra always called them. Faraday never complained when the meals they made were subpar. He ate what they had served and didn't tolerate complaints from either of them. The punishment for making something barely edible was having to eat it yourself. Citra ate, even though she didn't have an appetite, even though the whole world had slid off its axis. Breakfast was breakfast. How dare it be? When Faraday broke the silence, it still felt like a brick was flying through the window. I will go out alone today. The two of you will attend to your studies. Yes, says Faraday, Citra said, with Rowan saying the same in a half-second echo. For you, nothing has changed. Citra looked down into her cereal. It was Rowan who dared to state the obvious. Everything has changed, sir. And then Faraday said something that would only resonate with them much longer. Perhaps everything will change again. And then he left them. The space between Rowan and Citra had quickly become a minefield, a dangerous no man's land that promised nothing but misery. It was hard enough to navigate with Scythe Faraday there, but it was his absence left the two of them with no one to mediate the space between. Rowan stayed in his room, studying there rather than going into the weapons room, which would feel painfully wrong without Citra sitting with him. Still, he kept his door cracked on the faint hope that she'd want to bridge the distance. He heard her leave, probably for a run, and she was gone for a good long time. Her way of dealing with the dark discomfort of this new situation was to remove herself from it even more completely than Rowan had. After she returned, Rowan knew there would be no peace between them, or within himself, unless he took the first step into that minefield. He stood outside her closed door for at least a full minute before he worked up the nerve to knock. "What do you need?" she asked, her voice muffled by the closed door. "Can I come in?" "It's not locked." He turned the knob and slowly opened the door. She was in the middle of the room with a hunting knife, practicing blade craft against the empty air, as if battling ghosts. "Nice technique," Rowan said, and then he added, "If you're planning on gleaning a pack of angry wolves, skill is skill, whether you use it or not." And she sleeved the blade, tossed it on her bed, and put her hands on her hips. "So, what do you want?" "I just wanted to say I'm sorry for shutting you down before. On the train, I mean." Citra shrugged. "I was babbling. You were right to shut me up." The moment began to get awkward, so Rowan just went for it. "Should we talk about this?" She turned away from him and sat on the bed, picking up a book of anatomy and opening it as if she were about to start studying. She hadn't yet realized she was holding it upside down. "What's to talk about? I kill you or you kill me. Either way, I don't want to think about it unless I have to, or until I have to." She glanced at the open book, turned it the right side up, and then gave up the charade completely, closing it and tossing it to the floor. "I just want to be left alone, okay?" Even so, Rowan sat on the edge of her bed, and when she didn't tell him to go, he shifted a little bit closer. She watched him but said nothing. He wanted to reach for her, maybe touch her cheek, but thinking about that made him think of the saleswoman who was gleaned by a touch. What a perverse poison that was. Rowan wanted to kiss her. There was no denying that anymore. He had suppressed the urge for weeks because he knew it would not tolerated by the Scythe. But Faraday wasn't here, and the turmoil they had been hurled into had washed all bets off the table. And then, to his surprise, she suddenly lurched forward and kissed him, catching him completely off guard. "There," she said, "we've done it. Now it's out of the way, and you can leave." "What if I don't want to?" And she hesitated long enough to make it clear that staying was a distinct possibility. But then she said, "What good would it do, really, for either of us?" She moved further away on the bed, bringing her knees to her chest. "I haven't fallen in love with you, Rowan. And now I want to keep it that way." Rowan got up and he moved to the safety of the threshold before turning back to her. "It's all right, Citra," he told her. "I haven't fallen in love with you either." Is that the truth? What do you think about how they're acting? Do you think that's the truth? Here is from the journal. "I am not a man easily brought to fury, but how dare the old guard Scythes presume to dictate my behavior? Let every last one of them glean themselves, and we can be done with their self-loathing ways. I am a man who chooses to glean with pride, not shame. I choose to embrace life, even as I deal death. Make no mistake, we Scythes are above the law because we deserve to be. I see a day when new Scythes will be chosen not because of some moral high ground, but because they enjoy the taking of life. After all, this is a perfect world, and in a perfect world, don't we all have the right to love what we do?" And that's from the Gleaning Journal of H.S. Goddard. Okay, so that's the guy that likes to do those mass killing gleanings. That's crazy. I wonder why all of a sudden we're getting his journals. Do you think he's going to be our new... No, see, it goes back to Curry in the next chapter. That's kind of odd. So he thinks that we shouldn't have any moral code to be a Scythe. That's chapter 15. Thanks for listening. Till next time.